Hi, Matthew.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. How you doing, brother?
I'm not bad for an old man.
Well, you don't look bad for an old man.
Well, okay. I believe you.
I
I'll
guess,
believe you.
yeah, creators are always young at heart, you know.
I suppose. Yeah, yeah. I still have the same. I don't know what you'd call it. Uh, Attraction to what I'm doing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like it.
that's good. That's good. That's good. It never
Yeah.
dies, does it?
No,
Our work never dies, you know.
no. Well, back in the old days when I used to write speeches for people I didn't like, sometimes it was a struggle. But I got over it. I
That,
had a family to feed, so I did it.
yeah. That's actually a component of your life story I want to touch on, but
Sure.
we'll get there. We'll get there. But thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be
So,
here.
and how's your morning so far?
Well, I made breakfast and I made a pot of tea and managed to get everything done without disaster. So yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
It's now about just after 9 o'clock here, and I've been up
Yes.
since 8. Yeah,
Okay. So what's
yeah.
your average morning like? Is that it or
Oh, pretty slack. I get up around about 8, and usually my wife has gotten up before me because she's looking after our uh, 2-year-old granddaughter. We live with my son's place. So she makes the tea, and then I go down and sit at the table and drink a couple of
drink the
cups
tea?
and read the papers online and maybe do an email or two. And
Yeah.
I don't work until the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, that was gonna be like my next question, because some authors prefer to or any form of creative, who likes to write in the morning or the evening.
Well,
Like we all built different.
yeah, I can do it anytime. I have written under all kinds of circumstances. I started out in as summer staff in a newsroom of a daily newspaper, and this is long ago, and everybody clacking away on manual typewriters and shouting into phones, maybe 20 or 30 people around me making a hell of a noise, but I had a deadline and I had stories I had to write, so I did them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
And
it
how was
it stood me in good stead over the years. Bum in seat, fingers on keyboard, get it done.
and you've like lived in different generations. So as far as technology is concerned, like from typewriters to computer to laptop, how was that transitions for you throughout the years?
Um, it was fairly easy. I was really happy to get to correctable Selectric IBM typewriters, so I didn't have to put a little bit of stuff in between the paper and the key and restrike. You won't even have heard of that. That was how we used to do
Yeah,
corrections on
yeah.
paper. Yeah, so the correctable was lovely. And then in '84, um, I've been hearing about word processing, and I thought it might work for me. So I bought a used computer, a thing called what was it? A Super Brain. Yeah, it had a like 64K RAM on it, and it was a Super Brain. it was it was awful, but it came with a daisy wheel printer, which was a big deal in those days, and that was what was really 90% of the cost. And on it, I learned WordStar. And then I used WordStar right up until just a few years ago because it's the best word processing program ever made. Um, and I used to be able to get it on my laptop because my computer genius son would install a DOS emulator so I could do a DOS program. But the last time he did it, somehow he neglected to put on a converter. So I can't convert from WordStar to RTF. So I started using Word. Which I
Okay.
don't like. I really, I mean, WordStar was wonderful. You learn the key codes, and you can do anything on the
Yeah.
keyboard. Yeah, don't need a mouse. Don't need to be moving things around, and it doesn't get in the way with stupid suggestions like Word
Yeah,
does.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's no way of like getting it back to use it again.
Oh, I probably could, but I'm pretty well stuck with Word now. Most of what I've written is in Word in the past
Yeah.
5 years. So yeah.
Yeah, we sort of just get comfortable, after using a certain software for a long period of time.
Yeah. One thing that never worked for me, and I found this out the hard way. I got a job as a speechwriter to a cabinet minister in Ottawa, and they gave me a dictaphone and a secretary outside to type everything up. And I started trying to do speeches by dictating. And I discovered that the part of my brain that talks is different from the part of my brain that writes with my fingers. And what came out of me was like real bureaucratic crap. So I had to say, never mind, get me a typewriter and my secretary will have nothing to do, but that's okay. And that's from then on, I sat there and typed, and everything worked wonderfully.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so I mean, we can start there, Like I'm intrigued about, political writing, and I know you've also written for CEOs as well. And if the average person looks closely, even in modern times, if you had to, listen to any president from any country speaking, you will notice a difference when they speak, when the tone that's coming out and, their body language. It's not hard to realize that, speeches are pre-written by someone else versus when they randomly ask a question, say by the media. So let's start there. Like, how did that all start for you to become a political
Um,
speechwriter?
okay. By pure fluke, I had been editing a little tabloid newspaper, weekly newspaper in a small town in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. And I'd found out that my bosses were crooks. So I'd done my 6 months that I'd agreed to, and I was working out my 2 weeks notice. And a man came in who was the campaign manager for the member of parliament who'd just been elected for the first time in that riding, and who was on the government side, which I hadn't voted for. I vote for the New
Yeah.
Democratic Party, not the Liberals. But the guy said, "How would you like to go to Ottawa and be an assistant to the MP? And what we really want you to do is ghostwrite columns for the writing press, the newspapers." Because I did really good columns. He liked them, even though I hadn't supported.
Hey,
Here we are.
yeah, not sure what happened.
Well, the prompt said it might be unstable internet connection. I don't have that. I have a Starlink connection. Or it might be my browser. I'm using Firefox.
Yeah, well, these things are happening. We're living in weird times. Like we have been experiencing
Oh, yeah.
blackouts in South Africa as well over the last few weeks, and it happens randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all cool. Now we can continue from where we
Where do we leave off?
stopped, and yeah, I'll just edit that part out. So we're
Okay.
at the part where you offered to go and work, as an assistant under the MP.
Right. Yeah. So it's 6 weeks into the job, and the MP comes into the office. I'm sitting there writing something, and he says, "I'm seconding debate on the speech from the throne," which is a big speech at the beginning of a parliament where the government lays out its plans and so on. In England, they call it the King's Speech, and it's a big deal. And they always, with a new parliament, they always get a maiden MP from the West and one from the East to do the moving and seconding. And my guy is doing the seconding, so he's got to go into parliament with everybody there because it's the big debate, and he's got to make his first speech, and I have to write my first speech. So I went down to the speaker's office to get some examples of what these things were, and they look pretty simple. So I wrote him a speech, and first draft he loved, and he went out and gave it, and they loved it. And one of the big wigs of the party came, put an arm around him, said, "You're going places, boy." And next thing, he was chairman of the caucus of all the Liberal MPs from British Columbia. And because of that speech, writing associations and other people started asking him to come and give speeches. And so I was writing speeches 2 or 3 a week. And that drew the attention of some ministers' offices because they were always looking for speechwriters. And next thing I know, after a brief stint editing for National Defense, because my MP was an absolute disaster, could give a good speech if you wrote him one, but otherwise he was a drunk and a woman chaser and so on. Bad choice. Anyway, within a few months, I was staff speechwriter to the Minister of Justice. And that was interesting because I'm not a lawyer, but we had hundreds of lawyers in the building. So, you know, I could work it out.
The King's Speech.
Yeah.
Sorry, it sounds familiar.
Well, they do it in Parliament in Westminster. All the MPs are there. Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. This is one of the books I picked up. It's on my read list. I haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay, well, that's a slightly misleading title because that king had a terrible stutter. And he wasn't supposed to be the king. His brother was the king, and then his brother got involved with an American divorcee and had to abdicate. And then George became the king with his stutter, and then he had to learn how to overcome it, it's a lovely, heartwarming even movie. It's certainly worth watching. And I suppose the book is probably just as good, if not better.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting there. Yeah, I picked it up. You know, it looked intriguing. And I was like, okay, now I want to read this. Let me check what this is about. So, you know, what's the chances?
It's a small world. Yeah. Anyway, that's how I got into speech writing. I did a year and a half or so for the Minister of Justice, and then a couple of years Minister of Environment. Then I went back out to Vancouver to freelance, which was kind of a disaster because in Ottawa, they had a guy who was writing speeches for the Department of Environment and for the minister, and they would come to me and I'd have to rewrite them because they were terrible. It didn't sound like my minister at all. And this guy was then, I mean, I was making 16 grand a year as a staffer. He was making 75 writing bad speeches. So I thought, I'm going home to Vancouver and I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a ton of money. And the trouble was nobody had ever done that in Vancouver before. There were no freelance speechwriters. So I would have the director of corporate communications for a forest company would say, well, how can you write a speech for our CEO if you're not an expert in this industry? And I would say, how can you send your CEO out with a speech that isn't written by an expert speechwriter? And after a while, I wore them down. I used to tell them, okay, the day will come when you screw up and you forget to get a speech and it's got to be given tomorrow or the next day. And the boss is screaming at you and you call me, I'll come in, I'll fix it. And I did that 3 or 4 times over 2 years and built up a clientele.
Okay. So I got to
I was really good at that. This is a funny thing. I had a knack for speech writing. I had no training.
Yeah.
But I could get the guy's voice in my head and write so it sounded like him. And I learned early on that speeches are not about transmitting information. They're about creating an impression, especially a friendly, warm impression between the speaker and the audience. Because nobody remembers speeches, but everybody remembers how they felt when they were having a speech done to them. And that's what I would shoot for.
100%. No, you're right about that. It's the feeling. What is that emotional?
Yeah, I bet you've been to speeches that you couldn't quote a line from, but you remember the feeling, right?
Yeah. Or even if you watch, anyone like even speaking online, when their body language is like so into it, and they're so charismatic, like just out there. And you leave there feeling, pumped up, or you're watching this like, I'm pumped up about this speech,
Yeah. Or a lot of them, like business speeches, it's just to be reassuring. A lot of the people in the audience have got stock in that company, and they want to feel good about that. And seeing the guy up there looking like somebody you can rely on, because the way I would do most business speeches, it would sound as if it would be written in the voice and cadence of the speaker, and it would sound as if he was just talking and looking down at some notes when actually he was reading what I wrote for him. And that always made a favorable impression. People thought, boy, this guy's really on top of it. Yeah.
And did you ever have like any person in government or CEO memorize those speeches?
No.
Where they could just look at the audience and be like,
nope. That's, in ancient Rome, that was a skill that orators could use, but I have never seen it in modern times. They read the text. Often they read it off a teleprompter.
Yeah, because now they have it right in front of them, so you don't need to look down anymore.
No.
Yeah. So I got to ask, so like, what is the process now in writing a speech for someone else? Like, where do you get, the information from to actually, lay down the speech? Is the truth, in it, or how does it go? Like when they're reading it, like.
I haven't done it for a long time, but I remember it well. I would go into the PR people or public information people, if it was government, and they would give me background stuff. And then I would usually interview the actual person making the speech. I wanted to get the voice right. And also I wanted to know what they wanted to do with the speech, what they wanted to achieve by making this speech. And that's usually got nothing to do with facts and figures and everything to do with making contact with the audience. And sometimes it's the audience sitting there in the seats, and sometimes it's the audience that you get from clips shown on the media, in which case you've got to have that nugget in the speech. And sometimes it's just word of mouth, what people say the next day when they're talking about your speech. And I would try to determine which of those three was the most important, and I would steer towards that. And then I would go home and originally sit with my typewriter, and I would write the speech. And then I would bring it in, and usually first draft was it.
Was approved.
Yeah.
So with regards to like speech writers over the course of time, when it came to propaganda, what's your feelings around that?
That's what I used to do for a living. So I didn't always agree with it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Most of my clientele over the years were corporate businessmen, and they had things that they, I won't call them fads, but I'll call them streams that came through. Early on in the mid 80s, it was productivity. We got to have more productivity. And that what it really meant was doing more with fewer people. We had to find ways to cut the workforce and make them work harder. And I never cared for that. I'm a labor kind of guy. I come from a working poor family, but I would write that. And then as we got into the 90s, it became shareholder value. And what that meant was keeping the stock price up in the short term, because many of the people I was writing for were only going to be in the CEO position for a few years, and then they would move on or retire. And they would accumulate stock options every year. And when the time came to leave, they would cash those in. Now, a stock option, if the share price is $50, the CEO will get that for $30. So he can pay $30 to cash in his options and then sell them for $50. He makes a great big capital gain in a day,
Yeah.
And you add to that the salary they've been, pulling down millions a year. So a bad thing happened. Companies that had been around for decades began to decline and when we had the North American Free Trade Agreement, they started being bought up by the Americans. Companies that have been iconic within Canada, like Macmillan Bloedel was the biggest forest company in Canada, and it was bought by Weyerhaeuser. I used to write speeches for the CEO of Mac Blow, but once it was run by a vice president set up from the States, that market just disappeared. And gradually my market did disappear which is when I segued into writing fiction.
Okay, this is mind blowing.
Well, it's been an
behind the
unusual
scenes.
life. Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, like I look at, political speeches in this day and age, and I see thousands and thousands of people, in the arena, and they so amped and pumped up, about what's coming out of that person's mouth. So I've like always known myself, that political figure or that business figure never really write all that he is preaching.
Well, a good one will work with the speechwriter to get everything just the way they want it. Although sometimes the way they want it might not be the best way for them. And then I had to argue, no, I think we should downplay that and lift this because that's what's really going to sell. But most people who are have got somewhere in politics have a pretty good idea of what they're doing. We won't talk about Donald Trump, who has no idea what he's doing. But there is a collaboration between the speechwriter and the speaker, because the speaker is the guy who has to go out and give it.
Yeah.
So, and nobody's going to say, "Oh, he's got a bad writer." They're just going to say, that didn't work for me.
Yeah. I'm not sure how true this is, because you mentioned Donald Trump. I heard that his speechwriter is actually someone that was taken out of Hollywood.
I have no idea. No.
Yeah.
I don't delve into him very much.
Yeah. But they don't call it like speech writing anymore. Now they call it a script writer. The script.
Yeah. Well, it is a script. It is a script, and they go out and they say it. Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks for sharing that. That was awesome. So you transitioned from a speechwriter to an author, science fiction and fantasy. Why those two genres?
By accident, again, same as how I fell into speechwriting. I wrote a little novel in my spare time back in 1987. Got a New York agent who was a big guy, but he couldn't sell it. So I put it on a shelf, went on speechwriting. Eventually, I sold it to a small Canadian press, which was part of a big empire. It's part of the Robert Maxwell empire. And the week that it was coming out in 1994, they were taken over and dissolved. So my novel went nowhere. It went to the warehouse and just sat there because it wasn't part of the successor organization's marketing plan. They weren't in that business. Anyway, so I kept on writing speeches, and then I decided I would be a crime writer. I'd write about not detectives so much, but more about from the point of view of minor criminals, because I come from a family in which there are quite a few minor criminals. We're not an actual crime family, but if it's not nailed down, it's ours, Anyway, so I was getting ahead with that. I had a novel published. I was selling short stories to Alfred Hitchcock magazine, and I won an award for Best Short Story of the Year in Canada. And then I saw an interview with a rather prominent editor in New York who was looking for fantasy novels that were unusual. And that's what I had that I couldn't sell. So I sent it to her, and she liked it. And she said, okay, we'll take that, write a sequel. I wrote a sequel, and unfortunately it was ironic comic fantasy that came out just in time for 9/11 to change the public mood. So they didn't ask for a third book. But another publisher said, I really like that kind of stuff. Do one for me. So I wrote a science fiction novel. And then a small press, very reputable small press called Nightshade said, we like the stories you've been doing in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. Do some novels. So I got a 3-book deal with them. And so suddenly I was a science fiction and fantasy author.
My mistake.
Even though I wanted to be a crime writer. But what I did do is I did a lot of science fiction and fantasy in which the characters were criminals. I melded the two together, and I'm still doing that.
Nice.
Yeah, well,
Nice, nice.
the book that my publicity agent promoted to you, Henchmen, is
Yep.
about two guys who are henchmen. Yeah, and they're not exactly nasty, but they're looking for the opportunity. They go to work for a guy who's obviously dealing in some kind of contraband, and they don't say, "Oh God, we can't do this." They say, "How can we make some money off this?" You know, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah, which is kind of people in my family. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, since you've already brought up the henchman, let's just touch on the book first. Before we get to your creative process. So the henchman, how did that come about? Like your character development, the names that you
okay,
chose, the
okay. I
storyline.
have all right. I have to step back and put an explanation out. About 75 years ago, a very good but then young science fiction author, American, called Jack Vance, wrote a book called The Dying Earth. And it was about a far future, very, very far future, old Earth where the sun is going to go out and everybody is world weary and cynical and everything is anti-heroes. And it was, I was fascinated by it, like in my teens when I first read it. And when I got round to writing science fiction and fantasy, I had to find myself really influenced by Vance. He'd done space opera and he'd done Dying Earth, and I did both as well. So what I've been doing with a lot of my novels and the short stories as well in the magazines is extrapolating from his vision of the dying Earth, the ancient, old, tired out, cynical Earth. And because I don't do, excuse me, I don't do heroes. I do minor characters who have problems. So I've been putting minor characters through the problems that they can encounter in a world of walled cities and wizards and cynicism. And you have these places that are ruled by people who are like Renaissance Italian dukes, autocrats, and they want what they want, and that's it. And they have courtiers who are very cynical and nasty, and you really don't want to deal with them, but sometimes they make you deal with them, so that gets to be part of it too. What I've done, I'm writing a series set in an environment, but I'm not writing about one character going through that environment book after book. I take small figures. Now, Henchman is two characters who meet at the beginning of the book. They're both in their young to mid-20s. And they were actually older characters in a previous book. And I thought they were interesting. They were supporting characters in a series of stories about a henchman of a wizard.
Right.
Yeah. And then I thought, well, okay, what were they like 20 years before? Let's do that. How'd they get to be who they became in the previous book? So I sat down and wrote that. And I've done that with a number of, I had a book called A God in Chains, about a guy who was badly used by a wizard, but finally overcame it. Happy ending. In that book, there was a riverboat. And the first mate of that riverboat was a woman, very tough-minded, played a minor part in the story. But when I was finished that one, and I was thinking, well, what to do next, I thought, why don't I make her the heroine, the protagonist of her own story? And that became a book called A God in Hiding. And out it came. I got it up on Amazon, and it sold pretty well, got good reviews. Yeah. So that's what I do. I take characters, sometimes minor characters from a previous story, and I inflate them and tell their story, and then move on from there. So you get continuity, but not the same character over and over again. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing strategy, and I've seen that strategy in movies as well. Like, I'm going to use Marvel as an example. Like a Marvel movie, I'm just going to say Spider-Man, ends with this minor character at the end who enters the scene. And then the next Marvel movie that comes out about like 2-3 years later is on that character.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like how Marvel had Ant-Man.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I don't watch Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But
But as you're
that's
talking about,
interesting to know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand
Well,
what you're doing, you know.
it does work as a strategy. Uh,
Yeah,
I can tell
definitely.
by the
Definitely.
emails I get and the reviews from my readers, they like what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't see you going wrong with that strategy,
Yep.
you know. And I mean, you've done it, you know, of your own will. It's organic without even realizing that, look, you know, Marvel is using it. They probably got it from you, for all we know, you know.
I doubt it.
It's a
No.
ruthless business. It's a ruthless
No.
business. You know, you're going to get
Well,
a.
yeah. Everybody steals ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. And they just reverse engineer it. You know,
Mm.
so you know, they could have picked up your book at Marvel. There's a producer sitting there, okay, what's the next big idea? Oh no, look what Matthew Hughes has done. He's taken two minor characters from this book. Now he's made them main characters. Let's do it. I swear Marvel has used the same concept. You
Yeah.
know, you get this minor
Well.
character, say Ant-Man. There's a character called Ant-Man in the Marvel movie, in the Marvel series. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden there's an Ant-Man movie. You know?
Yeah. Okay. It makes
So,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But I mean,
if
it does make it interesting to follow, which makes it, you
yes.
know, so much more easier for these big corporations to monetize it because they know what the
Yes.
audience wants now.
Yeah. And what they want is that universe, and they want to see it from different perspectives, not the same one. Yeah. Well, it's what I think, and obviously somebody in the brains of the movie industry is saying, yeah, that's what I want too. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how
Hmm.
does your storyline come to you? You know?
Oh, well, okay. They say there are two kinds of fiction authors. There are planners, also called plotters, or pantsers, which is people who go by the seat of their pants. And I go by the seat of my pants. I start a story with a character in a normal situation for that character. It might be abnormal to us, but for him or her, it's normal. And then something happens that causes a problem, and they have to respond to it. And that may involve other people who've got their agendas, and I build from there. It's an organic process. I have no idea how it's going to end when I start it. And often I can be a third or a halfway through before I really get an idea of what it's about, thematically, what the story's about. That always makes it easier once you know that. But what's happening is the guy in the back of my head, my unconscious or subconscious or whatever you want to call it, seems to put together stories and then feed them to me about 1,000 words a day. And I write them down and edit them a little. And that has worked over and over and over again.
Yeah. It's a download.
It comes up from the basement is what I think.
Yeah.
He comes up the stairs, knocks on the door, says, "Here, take this." Yeah.
Yeah. On the podcast yesterday, we actually touched on this specific topic. Like, so, I mean, okay, yesterday was with the musical artist, but like, how does the composition or the final production, the song itself actually come about? And then we jumped into spirituality, as well. Like, it just naturally happens. You like start at one point and it just comes to you and you know what fits, what doesn't fit. And that's how you get to the final product, just like it's a download. Depending, what your spiritual beliefs are, where, this sort of like, does it come from the source? Questions
Well,
to
for
ask.
me, I think it comes out of me. I become my characters as I write them, not fully. I'm not in a huge rage like they are sometimes, but I feel a pale shade of the emotions that they're feeling. And that, I think, helps me a great deal because then it doesn't come off as contrived. It comes off as natural, organic. So I believe, well, I know I have what they call a fragmented psyche. There are different parts of me that do different things. It's not like full-blown multiple personality, but it's definitely there's different parts of me. Like the guy I am when I'm playing the piano is different from the guy I am when I'm driving a car. It's just
Right.
I feel the change, and I know it's happening, and that's just me. So there's a guy who is my creator inside me, the guy who creates stuff, and I'm the guy who channels it and then makes sure it's grammatically correct and so on. Try to get the typos out. Yeah. So it's a partnership, a symbiotic relationship of some kind between me and the other part of me that's doing this.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's something to
Yeah,
actually
well,
think about in one one's life.
well,
Yeah.
I learned this when I was about 10, I think, 9 or 10. I was in the schoolyard, and two guys were going around. One of them had a cast on his leg with a steel bit on the bottom, a walking cast. And his friend was grabbing people and holding them, and then he would come and stomp them with the steel, which really hurt people. And they did this to a friend of mine. So I couldn't do anything about the kid in the cast. You couldn't hit him because he's crippled up. But the guy who was holding people, I went at him and I was punching the hell out of him. And unfortunately for him, he got knocked back against the chain link fence of the schoolyard. And I just kept hitting him. Because what always happened with me in fights, I didn't have a lot of them, but I had a few when I was a kid. Everything would slow down, and I would sort of watch from the outside as the fighting happened. And then when the kid went down, I would step in and be in charge again. But this kid was not going down. He couldn't fall down. And he was actually out on his feet, beaten unconscious, with my little fist pounding into him. And I had to say to myself, that's enough, and step back. And it was then that I realized there were those two different parts of me, the one that did the fighting and the one that did the watching. And that was just who I was, just natural to me.
Split personalities all at once.
Somewhat, yeah. It's I always believed in Carl Jung's view of the psyche that there are different elements of it that cohere together and sometimes conflict together to make you who you are.
Yeah. Do you believe like in different dimensions? Like one dimension, is a different version of me. The next dimension, a different version of me. There's another reality that exists of me, but behaving in a different way.
Well, physicists, some of them say that there are infinite numbers of universes, and they could be quite right. But I can't say I believe in it because it doesn't make any difference to me at all. I'm in this one being me. So if there's another me somewhere else, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, 100%. Makes me think of like quantum physics as well.
I have no understanding of that at all.
Yeah. Well, in simplest terms, like sometimes we could be on that borderline of our different personalities or different realities. So, would act like how, A of me would normally act maybe calm, cool, but then you're on that borderline as well of B who can be like, violent and an extrovert and out there. And at times it can clash. Topic for another day.
Yeah. Get a psychologist in.
Yeah. That's the thing, as creators, our imagination never stops. We'll just keep asking questions, whether it makes sense or not, whether it's right or wrong. Like, how does, the universe actually work versus how we have been told it works, Yeah, it's interesting.
That changes every few years when they find out more stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we can never stop learning, Can never. There's so much to learn.
Yeah, you shouldn't. But some people do.
Yeah. I think most people do. The majority does.
Yeah.
Like go to school, okay, I've learned that, and go to university, I could learn that. That's it for the rest of my life. Done, finished.
Well, you do have people who get through school and then never pick up a book again.
True.
And they're no use to me because I'm writing books, but there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Those are the people we call parrots, parrot learners.
Mm.
They're going to preach to you something they learned like 10 years ago, which is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So you are also a Hall of Fame author.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Well, I wrote an awful lot of stuff, and won some awards, and was shortlisted for other awards. So that made me look legitimate, credible.
Yeah.
And I was a member of SF Canada, the Association of Science Fiction Authors, Publishers, Editors, and so on, for years and years, and participated quite a bit through the email list server that they had. Eventually, I left that after there was a bit of nastiness I didn't care for at all, happening to other people. But so I became a figure in the landscape of science fiction and fantasy in Canada. And at some point, some people who knew me and knew my work put me up to be one of the inductees for the year. I think they have 3 every year. And back in, I guess it was 2020, thereabouts, it was my turn. So they inscribed my name on a trophy, which I've never seen. It's somewhere. And I get to say I'm in the Hall of Fame. And that,
how does
and
it make you feel?
Well, that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. Well, it actually, I'll be honest, it feels nice. It is nice to be able to say that, because it means people in that community, in the science fiction and fantasy community of Canada, are aware of me and aware of what I've done, and they think it's worthy of note. And that's nice. Yeah.
That is nice. It's quite an achievement. I guess the bigger purpose, with that is also being like an advocate in the space as well for like up and coming independent authors. I mean, do you ever like chat with up and coming authors, share advice, processes, how to get your first book going, publishing?
Not directly anymore. I have mentored some people. I used to actually hire out as a book doctor and editor and writing coach, you might say, for people who wanted to pay me to help them. But what I've done in recent years, there is a site called scribophile.com, where essentially it's a mutual support and help, where writers of various strengths, including beginners, can come together and post things they've written and have them critiqued by people who are at different levels. So, you get various things there. I don't do critiquing, but I do comment in the forums a lot and try to give useful advice on the craft and also on the business, because a lot of people don't realize it is a business, and it is a hard business.
Yeah. I mean, in all sectors of, the entertainment creative industry, like I always work by the 80-20 rule, 80% business, 20% creating. If you're not going to focus and educate yourself on how the business works, whether it be in writing, whether it be in music, whether it be in graphic design, you're not really going to sustain yourself, long term.
No. And also, the internet has made this so easy now for predators to take advantage of the hopes and dreams of people who are trying to become writers. And, they every time I put a new book out and I go to Facebook and say, here's my new book, I immediately get these little messages, tell me more about your inspiration. And it's somebody who's trying to establish a relationship with me so they can sell me something, or maybe steal my identity. I don't know. But the the world is full of people who are masquerading as editors, publishers, agents, who will take in a neophyte and fleece him and give him nothing in return except disappointment. And the new ones need to be warned about that. So that's one of the things I do from time to time.
100%. You have to be careful. You have to be careful.
Yeah. It's a jungle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, something so, like yesterday, the topic or an example was brought up as well on this topic was, someone sending naked pictures over the internet. I'm like, why would you even do that? Why would you even do it? Then you get blackmail. And then in this case, it led to suicide.
I can tell you why I think. It's teenagers who are being victimized, and people are pretending to be teenagers, grown-ups, scam artists, and they lure these kids into feeling that they actually have a relationship and a very positive relationship with that person. And then that person sends them a picture, which not really the person who's sending it. It's, some poor kid, and asks to have it, send me one of you. And they do, because they feel comfortable and secure. And then the next thing they know, their supposed friend is saying, send me some money, or I'm going to put this picture of you where everybody can see it, including all your friends. And well, it's just the world is full of people who are psychopaths, and they have no empathy and no feeling for others, and many of them are very good at manipulating other people. And they are I used to say for the ones that pretend to be agents for writers, that they are actually like the predators in the insect world that can mimic the pheromones of their prey. So the moth thinks it's going to come down and mate with that scent, and instead it gets grabbed and eaten because it's a fake pheromone. It's like that in that business. There are people out there, like about 2% of the population score high enough on the checklist to be called psychopaths. That means 1 out of 50 people around us has the potential to be an absolute monster. Not necessarily stabbing you or anything, but just using you and throwing you away. And we meet them in the world. I mean, we all have met people like that. In politics, they're not at all rare, and the same in the corporate world. That's one of the parts of being a human being, is you're bump into those, and you've got to recognize them when you do, and not let them get their hooks into you.
Yeah. So, I mean, to up and coming authors, listening to the podcast, is you just need to be vigilant and do like proper research. Like if someone sends you a message that, look, I'm an agent and I can do ABC, dig deeper. Go on to Google, search the name,
Here's the test. If it's an agent or a publisher, so-called, and they want you to send them money, then they're not real. They're scam.
Exactly.
The best is that they're a vanity press, and you can pay them to publish your book. They won't edit it. They won't make any difference to it. And they'll send you a bunch of books that you can't sell because they're not worth anything. But you'll have paid $5,000 to have those books in your garage. The other thing, everybody who wants to get into the writing game, there's a site called Writer Beware, and it lists people who are scammers and phony, and tells how the scams work and how to avoid them. And anybody who wants to be a writer and be in the business should definitely have Writer Beware in their bookmarks.
Writers Beware.
Writer Beware.
That, in the description as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Thank you.
You got to help where you can.
Yeah, no, that takes you a long way, and it continues to build your own personal legacy as well. That you're living here. So onto artificial intelligence. What's your take on it for the
Oh,
future of creators
I,
slash
I'm
writers?
I'm compromised. Um, I do my own books now on Amazon and Kobo and so on, and I can't afford, $1,500 for an artist to do a really good cover. But I
Yeah.
find that using AI, I can do a really good cover. Like the cover of Henchman is one that I created in about 10 minutes. Um, so I'm not exactly a virgin discussing this, but the use of AI to write material that bothers me a lot because what I've seen as examples, uh, it's not good writing. It's adequate writing. It's you know it's the kind of thing a bright teenager might turn out at 16, and it's not yet good enough. It needs seasoning. That person needs to grow and learn and experience more and develop a deeper affinity for the use of the language. All of those things that make you into a real writer eventually. Um, but enough of that stuff could flood the marketplace and be cheap, you know, $1 on Amazon and crowd out the good stuff
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people who don't read at a very, very good level. And that kind of stuff is good enough for them. And there's a lot more people who don't read well than people who do read well. And it's just a matter of the numbers. AI in writing uh, could it could distort the craft and the market and the business. And I don't know how we'd get past it. The other thing is, I saw this recently. Um, a woman had written a very good book, and somebody had taken that book and had AI rewrite it poorly, and then they slapped a different title and a different author name and put it on Amazon. Yeah,
Wow.
and in fact, when she dug into it, she found there was several different versions of her book that had been bastardized by this AI scammer, and they were all up there competing at a lower price than she was getting.
Just look at
That's
that. Yeah.
that is I can see that as a looming problem. I mean, I keep my books cheap. My current price for a new novel is $6.99 American. People say I should charge at least $10, but I'd rather have more readers and more money at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. That's well said. That's well
Yeah.
said. Yeah. You're more concerned about your material and getting it in the right hands, and taking people to worlds unknown that they've never experienced
Yeah.
before than, earning an extra few dollars.
Yeah. Because I
100%.
don't really need the money. I got two little pensions coming in from the government from life of working, and I have the books that I sell on Amazon. Add to that, and then I've got a Patreon account. I should plug that. Patreon is a site where if you like somebody's work, whether it's writing, graphics, music, whatever, if they have a Patreon account, you can sign up and give them $5 or $10 a month off your credit card or your Apple phone or whatever. And that will encourage them to work. So I get, I think I have about right now about 80 people who send me a little
Nice.
money every month, and that adds up to enough that I not only can live, but I've actually saved some money for the first time in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in your Patreon channel page or is?
Well, if you just go to patreon.com and put my name in, I'll give
It'll
it to
pop
you.
up.
It's a
Okay.
bunch of numbers. Yeah.
Just on the topic of artificial intelligence, you've done nothing wrong by utilizing the tools to create the cover art for your book. You've used it
I
responsibly,
I
you
tell
know?
myself that because it's not that I'm putting a an artist out of work, because if I wasn't doing this, I'd just use some generic cover from Amazon, which they'll give you for free, and they're not very good. So, but
no, you've done nothing wrong. It's about keeping a balance. That's what I believe in. It's don't completely ignore the technology. It's going to play a huge role in the future to come, but keep a balance. Still keep your brand organic. I agree with you in using it to, write your content. I don't mind, authors using it to get advice, do research, or if you can't afford an editor and you're not too clued up on editing yourself, look at what the technology can do. But these are the tools also available, out there. Just keep a balance. But if you're using the tool, especially we've had Chat GPT, it's been around, it's old school. Now we have DeepSeek, which is also in the mix now. And DeepSeek, I mean, you're getting the tool for free that's giving you Chat GPT, the best it can do under a paid account. So it makes it more scary as well, as competition continues to grow. So it's nothing, honestly, you know what? I've used AI as well for certain cover arts when it comes to my music and for, NFTs that I'm creating. It's my prompts, it's relatable to my brand, it fits what I'm trying to sell. You just have to have limits, limits on it. My opinion.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful, horrible world, and it keeps changing every day. So you've got to learn to adjust to it and adapt to it and try to survive and try to flourish. And whatever it is, it'll be different tomorrow. So
yeah. Look at all the adapting you have done over your life period.
Oh yeah.
And look how well you turned out in the end.
Well,
still a great author, successful author. You got your own Patreon channel. I mean, that's awesome.
Well, I'm still alive and still punching. So yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people that you may not have won the fight, but if you're still on your feet and still throwing punches, you haven't lost.
Yeah. And are you self-published or are you still working for a publisher?
I am now.
Successful.
I had my shot at the big time 20 odd years ago now. Didn't fulfill the corporate model. So from then on, it was small presses. And over the years, I've sold 24 novels to small presses. And but I found that the amount of money you get and the time you have to wait, the thing with Amazon is I put out Henchman last Tuesday. So without a week, right? Yeah. And it's already made me $1,000. Right. Nice. So if I'd sold it to a small press in Canada, I would have got maybe an advance of $1,000. And then I would have to wait a year and a half for a royalties check on anything more. Whereas with Henchman, with Amazon, I've got $1,000 the first week. I'll probably make a few hundred the next week, and gradually it'll go down. But I'll always be selling a few copies, and I'll get the money right away, or more or less right away. So I decided about 5 years ago, unless some big publisher steps up with a big check, I'm going to just self-published.
But $1,000 in the first week it's impressive.
It's not bad. Yeah,
it's not bad at all.
That's a little better than normal. I think I've acquired some more readers since the last book I put out, and I'm getting good reviews. I've had one actual review, and I think 6 ratings on Amazon already, which is not bad in a week, and they're all 5-star. So,
which does well for your algorithm on Amazon itself.
Oh yeah. Well, as I say, and other people have said this before, there's not a lot of people who like my work, but the ones who like it a lot.
Yeah.
That will do for now for me. Yeah.
You built a loyal fan base, which is so important for creators.
Yep.
Build a loyal fan base. because, stop focusing on vanity metrics and trying to get, 20,000 likes on Instagram and no one buys your content.
No.
Focus on the crowd that really matters most, because they are going to continuously buy your work and support you and your journey.
Yeah. Well, I should probably do more on social media. I don't have an Instagram account. I don't have TikTok. I just do Facebook now. I used to do Twitter, but after it became X and filled up with Nazis, I thought, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. No, my dad fought those buggers in World War II, and that's good enough. Yeah.
But from where I'm sitting, Facebook is like the platform that's going to work, the best for you, especially because you are building or continuously building your community. It's the perfect platform to be on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I looked the other day, and apparently I have 2,500 friends, although a lot of them were people who just tried to sell me something or scam me, because I put out a book and they sent those messages and said, be my friend, and how would you like me to do a video for you and all that stuff.
Now I know why you were a great speechwriter. Just based on this conversation alone and how you can, get serious, make someone laugh, get serious again, make someone laugh.
Yeah, I could have been a comedian. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you where can people find you online, unless there is a website that, I can also share with listeners.
Well, I used to have a website, and I had a very brilliant guy who set it up and managed it for me. But then he just kind of disappeared. And then there was a WordPress update of some kind. And suddenly my webpage just disappeared as well. So if people want to know about me, the place to go is Wikipedia. If you put in Matt Hughes or Matthew Hughes writer in brackets,
right,
you get there's a nice guy who looks after it for me and puts in new stuff, and and that's that really has a comprehensive listing of everything I've done. All the stories and the novels and so on.
That was somewhat funny. The guy just disappeared.
Well, he had troubles. He had illness, and then he's American, and so there was debt from medical treatments and all that sad stuff that they go through. And I think he just ran out of steam. I don't even know if he's still alive, but he was a very nice man, and he did me a lot of good for nothing, no pay at all. And I wish him well.
Nice. That's so kind of you, coming from a good place. Well, yeah.
Well,
okay, thanks.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, I was
we're wrapping it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all your details. No, you may continue. Yeah, well, with what you're about to say.
Oh, I was just going to say that I always liked what the Dalai Lama said, which is, my religion is kindness. Be kind to people.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
Be a good human being.
Well, some will take advantage of it, but that's all right. That's not your fault. You're just being kind. Yeah.
You're just being
my mom used to be, my mother was a Rafferty from Liverpool, so Irish background. And she always used to say, what are we here for if not to help each other? Which I think is a nice way to live.
Yeah. If more people will just go out into the world and just smile and practice kindness and be humble, the world will be such a better place, There won't be so much conflict. We won't be fighting with each other because of political views or cultural beliefs or religious beliefs. We'll just be one,
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all we need. But people are so blinded and so brainwashed about what the next person is saying or about what this political figure is saying. We can't think for ourselves. Majority of the world cannot think for themselves.
Oh, well, I have a terrible theory about that, especially in the West, especially in America. that over the past 40, 50 years, they have transitioned from being a society of citizens into an economy of consumers. And the driving force behind it is the billions of dollars in psychological research performed every year in order to find out how to manipulate people's psyches and get them to buy stuff. And one of the things they've done, the thing about consumerism and being a consumer is you feel your way towards things. You get impressions, like I used to do in speeches. You feel about things. You don't think about things. Citizens have to think about things like the common good, and consumers just feel about what they want. The choices are between brands, not anything beyond themselves. And I think the net effect of this constant barraging of psychologically manipulative marketing techniques has got to the point where people's psyches have been altered at a deep level beyond anything they're aware of. And so you get, well, when I was a young reporter, I used to go out with a tape recorder on the street and ask people, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I noticed around about the mid-70s that stopped, and people said, how do you feel about it? As if that was important. And that was when the change was happening and people were becoming feeling consumers rather than thinking citizens. And now you get to the point where you have people, people getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as commentators and reporters, asking politicians and leaders how they feel about things, as if it mattered how the prime minister feels about an issue. What matters is the analysis and the thinking that's gone behind the policy, not the feeling. But feeling has now become the standard, and that's because we are consumers, and we have been conditioned to feel about things and not to think about them. And I think the outcome of that down the road is, well, it's already pretty awful. If you look at what's happening in the States, people didn't think about what Trump was saying. They felt he was on their side. Well, good luck. Yeah. No, that's my hobby horse theory. There you go.
Yeah. But it does make sense. It does make sense. Thanks for sharing that.
They wouldn't be spending those billions of dollars on research if they weren't getting somebody for it. That's for sure. Yeah.
It's all about controlling the emotions, controlling how, controlling the psychological aspect of it. And that's what, that vulnerability from people, that's what's played on, controlling the energies of the world. If we can control their energy, we'll be able to manipulate them to do exactly what we want, to believe what we want, and nothing else will matter.
And the main idea behind it is to make people feel good about themselves and in association with a particular brand. So I wear these kind of sneakers because that makes me feel good about myself. I drive that kind of car because I feel good driving that car. Now, it used to be, and I thought I might go into advertising as a copywriter when I was a teenager, until I'd met some advertising people and realized I was not going to do well. And I remember the old days when the advertising technique was to make you insecure. You were probably never seen any of those old commercials where they would say, ring around the collar, your laundry's not clean enough. And people notice you've got, ring around the collar. Or that your husband never wants a second cup of your coffee because your coffee is not very good. But when he's out and gets Maxwell House, then he's happy. They used to do this a lot. The commercials for deodorants, when it was finally becoming, fashionable for men to use deodorant back in the 50s, it was always what your best friends won't tell you, which is that you stink, But it was to make you feel insecure, and that would motivate you to buy the product. 100%, and then they did the research and it began to accumulate knowledge. And by the mid 70s, all of that stuff disappeared. And it became, you deserve a break today, which was, I think, the breakthrough commercial and campaign for McDonald's in the States and Canada. You deserve a break today. Go on, make yourself feel good. And
Yeah,
Nike,
yeah,
Nike comes in with just do it. All of that kind
yeah,
of stuff. It's all about making you feel good about yourself, and especially while you're at McDonald's or wearing your Nike sneakers or whatever.
yeah,
And making people feel good about themselves works, but it also has a cumulative, permanent effect on the psyche. They think they have to feel good about themselves. So you get that incident a few years ago with students screaming at a university professor because he was trying to tell them logically how things were working, and they didn't feel that way at all. And they were furious that he didn't recognize and back up their feelings, because their feelings were everything. Facts were not important. Argument was not important. How you feel is important. And that's what's been done to massive populations. They now think they have to feel, and they have to feel
yeah.
good about things. And if they don't feel good about things, your fault. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah,
Wow.
we've
Yeah.
wandered,
Not
we've
the thing.
wandered far afield.
Yeah. No, as you were like explaining about, the adverts that have been, pushed out throughout the years, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. It's just,
Well,
but I mean,
I'll say it again. They would not spend billions of dollars to hire psychologists to do research on people if they didn't get something out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, what would your message be now to the world?
I have no idea. You know, be nice, be thoughtful, find out things, educate yourself. Uh, don't rely on how you feel about things, because how you feel about things might be manipulated by professionals who are spending their time doing nothing but manipulating your feelings. Uh, get your brain
For their
working.
own agenda,
Yeah.
manipulating
Yeah.
your feelings for their own agenda. It has
Well,
nothing to do with you. It's nothing because they care about you or they're concerned about your future. It's all about their agenda.
it's usually about their bottom line. They want to make money. I mean, they haven't distorted the human psyche out of some ideological or religious thing. They just want to sell more shoes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's an unintended side effect of marketing. Yeah, but
And by selling all, I just said no, by selling like all their shoes and their clothing, all these brands that are out there, it's turned people into such mean individuals that if I'm wearing Nike or if I'm wearing Puma, I'm better. Now I'm better than
yeah,
the next person, you
yeah.
know. Now I have the right to degrade someone, to humiliate someone, to insult someone.
Well, yeah, you've got in group and out group, and I'm part of the in group because I wear that, and you're part of
Yeah,
the out group because you wear that. Yeah,
yeah. Look at the schools.
again, reaching back because I'm old enough to do this. Uh, go back to the 1960s. If you saw somebody with a sweatshirt that had something written on it, it was probably the university they went to. Or it might actually be a picture of Beethoven. That was very big in the 60s, and Mozart. Um, if you look around today, everywhere you go, you will see people wearing clothing with brand names. They are walking advertisements for the product. And the reason they're wearing those brand names is because they want people to know, and they want themselves to feel that they're that kind of person. I'm a guy who drinks Coors, because that
Yeah,
has
yeah,
meaning
yeah.
to me. Yeah. Well, I got a pair of shoes, running shoes, sneakers, and they've got a logo on them on the outside, so people can see what I'm wearing. and I can show people what I'm wearing. And you see T-shirts with the label on the outside, on the back. It's not just advertising. It's declaring who I am and the kind of person I am and what in-group I'm in. Because I wear that. Yeah.
And the thing is, the quality of the clothing that's coming out from these big brands is not even good.
But that's not important.
Good.
That's not important.
Yeah, exactly. It's not important,
No.
As long as there's a Nike symbol or a Puma symbol or Adidas symbol, that's all that matters. Even if I look like a clown, right?
Yeah.
Look like a clown, doesn't matter.
No.
It's branded.
I just want to point out, though, that business of people wearing brands started about 40 years ago, 50 years ago. 50. And never existed before. That never happened before in human history. It started to happen in the 70s. And that did not come about by accident. That was part of the brandification of humanity.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this.
Well, I love to get on my hobby horse and ride. Yeah.
This is gold, such explanations, such comments, hopefully, awakens. We push for one. We can get one awakened, it's good. Let one spread the message, how the world actually works.
Yeah.
But Matthew, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. I love what you've shared, from start to finish. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for sharing your gold. Yeah, much appreciated.
Okay.
And all the best, for what's to come.
Well, I'm writing another book, so there you go.
Right, that's it. That's the spirit. Yeah. Writing another book. And all the best with that. So just out of curiosity, when do you expect the next book to be out?
Well, I started it about 3 days ago, so it'll take me about 3 months. So, and this will be a space opera, and it will feature a guy who was a minor character in 2 previous space operas, and I thought it'd be interesting to see what his origins were. And right now, I've got him going home to his home planet after 20 years away, and finding out that there's a great big feud going on between 2 families, and apparently he was somehow the cause of it. So that's going to be fun to work out. I haven't figured out yet. I haven't figured out yet how he managed to do that, but it's a lovely situation. You come home
it is.
After 20 years and find out this huge problem, and you're the cause.
You're the cause.
What are you going to do about it? Yeah,
that's good.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, well, looking forward to that. That's a good trust. I mean, how your mind works, amazing.
Well, I didn't know that when I started it 3 or 4 days ago, but yesterday that came to me as that's what's going to happen, and now I'm pushing forward on that. So
100%.
it's just the guy in the back of my head. Yeah,
he's preaching.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew, thank you, and all the best, for all the projects ahead. I can't stop saying thank you, but thank you for sharing all your gold on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, all the best. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you. I'll bye-bye.
Bye.
Have to figure out how to close this. There we go. Okay.
And you. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.